Day 3 has wrapped on Chiefs training camp in St. Joseph, Missouri, and we have a few things to talk about, a whole lot of tweets to get into. But the first thing I want to say off the top is there is a load of defensive information in today's tweet storm, and one of the places where I'm going to get to towards the end of this video, the Kansas City Chiefs' newest wide receiver, Howe Presley, out of Baylor. When I was watching him play, something kept sticking out to me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and then I was driving to work last night, and the numbers from his RAS score started standing out in my mind, and I thought, that's what it is. Howe Presley will remind you of a former Kansas City Chief, line for line, almost is going to remind you of a former Kansas City Chief, and we'll get to that in a minute, but we're going to start here. So I don't think I saved the other tweet. No. So the starting offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs has been the same. You have Joshua Simmons, you have Kingsley Suamataia, you have Creed Humphrey, you have Trey Smith, and you have Jalen Moore. But this is the second team offensive line during installs, which means that it's pretty basically a depth chart at this point in training camp, and that is Wanya Morris at left tackle, Mike Caliendo at left guard, Hunter Nourzad at center, CJ Hansen at right guard, and Ethan Driscoll at right tackle. Now, I think that this is a pretty good group of guys for a second-string offensive line, and I think that CJ Hansen's spot is absolutely safe with this team. I know that Pete Sweeney thinks differently, and I will be watching to see if CJ Hansen takes any reps at all at offensive tackle, because I do think that he has upward mobility at the offensive tackle positions, and if he does, there's no question in my mind that he's safe. But if the Chiefs decide to go with 10 offensive linemen, I think this is probably your complete backup offensive line, just looking at the guys who are behind them as well. And there is a tweet letting us know that the third string offensive line as well, and there's a couple of those guys we're going to look at in depth here in this video too, so stay tuned for that. But Wanya Morris, Mike Caliendo, Hunter Nourzad, CJ Hansen, and Ethan Driscoll. If there is one man out here, I would say that it's probably Mike Caliendo. I think Mike Caliendo, while he does give you the most experience, offers you the least upside. Hunter Nourzad is a more solid lineman than Mike Caliendo. CJ Hansen is a more athletic offensive lineman than Mike Caliendo. Wanya Morris has the experience that does Mike Caliendo, plus he is a big, sturdy offensive lineman. And Ethan Driscoll has the size that you just can't teach. And I think that if he can get some of the technique stuff down, if he can get his strength up a little bit, Ethan Driscoll is going to be one of those guys that hangs around in the NFL for a decade. He just is going to be one of those guys because he has the length to take away the angles. So if he can get a little bit more of the technique down, it's just going to be very difficult to outmaneuver him on the roster. He's going to be one of these guys that you keep because you don't know what's going to happen during the course of a season. So I do think that Ethan Driscoll is one of those guys that could be a long-time NFL player. Moving on, Brashard Smith and Jalen Royals taking reps with the ones during install. So Jalen Royals, this probably should not surprise anyone too terribly much, especially considering that he is the same body type as Rashee Rice, and Rashee Rice is likely to serve a multiple game extension this year. K. Wayne says that he won't be back until the 2030s. I don't know if there's something between K. Wayne and Rashee Rice. Maybe Rice cut him off in traffic or something. It's hard to say at this point. But Brashard Smith, if you were to take this from the outside perspective, not knowing what we know, being this close to the team, I think that it would surprise you to see Brashard Smith taking reps with the ones. The Kansas City Chiefs have a starting running back in Isaiah Pacheco. They have a sort of reclamation project in Kareem Hunt, who did very well for the team last year. They have Elijah Mitchell, who is a very, very shiny prospect if he is healthy, and Brashard Smith is just a 7th-round pick. But This is not just any seventh-round pick. This is a guy who used to be wide receiver himself, and the Chiefs are looking to spice things up in 2025. But I think that it is impressive to look at this and to sort of take a step back and realize this is a fourth and a seventh-round pick taking reps on offense, a loaded offense for the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that has been to the previous 3 consecutive Super Bowls and won 2 of them. To say that the team defending the AFC side of the bracket for the 4th consecutive season, the Chiefs went 3 years in a row, right? That team has a 4th and a 7th round offensive player taking reps. You would say, I don't know what happened there, right? So Brett Veach is doing a very good job in that draft, getting players who are going to add actual value to the team. First team defensive line during installs, George Karlaftis, Mike Pennel, Chris Jones, and Mike Dana. I don't think this should surprise anyone too much. Mike Pennel is the crafty veteran. Chris Jones obviously is a Hall of Famer. George Karlaftis at the left defensive end spot just got paid. But right defensive end Mike Dana, maybe that would surprise you a little bit. I think that at this point in camp, you are giving Mike Dana his dues. He is a solid performer. Charles Omenihu, I think, will earn probably that second starting defensive end spot, but he's coming off of 2 half seasons, so it's hard to say what to make of Charles Omenihu too terribly much at this point. But Mike Dana with that second defensive end position, I think there's a couple things that you could be looking at. Charles Omenihu, Ashton Gelati, what's going on there, but I don't think we need to read too much into it at this point. Mike Dana, not a superstar, but has been a solid contributor. So I think that this defensive line doesn't look too bad, but I do think it will look different by the time week 1, snap 1 gets here. Third team offensive line during installs, Eza Pole, Dalton Cooper, Joey Lombard, CJ Hansen, and Chukwuebuka Godric. I'm never going to get his name correct. And for some reason, half the time when you find articles about him, he's Jason. So I'll just call him Jason Godric. If that is what he goes by, that is what he goes by. Couple things worth looking at here. CJ Hansen still getting reps with the threes. I do not think that is a sign that he is the lowest man on the number 2 depth chart. I think that this is a sign that he just needs work. The other thing worth looking at here, Dalton Cooper was an offensive tackle in college. So there's a video on both on all 3, Eza Pole, Dalton Cooper, and Joey Lombard on the channel from this past 2025 draft picks playlist. If you want to go check those full videos out, there's also one on CJ Hansen from last year. In that video, I said I think Dalton Cooper is probably destined for guard in the NFL. I think that he's perhaps a little too stiff. Eza Pole, the left tackle in this situation, Eza Pole is a guy who has a lot of upside. He did not allow a sack last year, despite the fact that I think that was his 3rd season ever playing football, something like that. But I do have their RAS scores pulled up. Eza Pole with a 7.3 RAS score. That's a solid number. He's 6'5", a little bit over 6'5", 323 pounds. Great weight for an offensive tackle there. Did 23 reps with 33, basically 33.5-inch arms, 33 and 6/8-inch arms. Then he had a 29-inch vertical leap, an 8'4" broad jump. He was a former basketball player, a 5.3 40-yard dash with a 1.87 10-yard split. That's not a good number, but a 4.72 short shuttle and an 8.03 3-cone drill. So you're looking at a guy who does have some decent athleticism here, and you know he has decent athleticism because he did all of the testing and still scored a 7.3. There was nothing taking away that good composite score. So I do think that he has, and they even list him here if you pay attention there, offensive guard, but he is going to be an offensive tackle. I think he has a future in the NFL at an offensive tackle position. I think he is going to be a practice squad player this year. And I think out of all those names up there, Ezapole, Dalton Cooper, Joey Lombard, CJ Hansen. So I think these two guys are going to be the practice squad offensive linemen, Ezapole and Dalton Cooper. Dalton Cooper with a 9.01 RAS score, and that's a good score. 6'5", almost 6'5.5", 33.5-inch arms, 323 pounds, 26 reps on the bench press, a 28-inch vertical, 9-foot broad jump, a 4.99 40-yard dash at 323 pounds, estimated 1.78 10-yard split, a short shuttle of 4.64, which is a really good number, and a 3-cone drill of 7.9. So I think that those two are likely destined to be your practice squad offensive linemen. I think that would be a great pair of guys to have on the practice squad because I think that there is a future in the NFL for both of them. I think it is also worth mentioning again that there is a possibility that someone from that second team offensive line, Wanya Morris, Mike Caliendo, one of those guys, might get traded. Oh, but scrambling, who's going to offer you anything for one of those guys? Well, I say it all the time, and I'm not going to stop. Yasir Durant was traded for a 7th-round pick just a few years ago, a UDFA out of Mizzou who played sparingly, very sparingly, exceedingly sparingly for the Kansas City Chiefs, was flipped for a 7th-round pick that ended up becoming the Chiefs' current number 2 cornerback. So that is worth keeping in mind. Brett Veach is very good at spending late-round draft picks. Tyquan Thornton working with the first-team offense during red zone work. This is becoming a theme. Tyquan Thornton looks like he is going to make this roster this season. Hard to know exactly why we didn't see more Tyquan Thornton late last year. I guess that they had the rotation. Eventually, they got back Hollywood Brown. He was signed in like November, wasn't he? Isn't that what happened with Tyquan Thornton? He wasn't an off-season addition, I don't think. I think he was signed to the practice squad late last year. I'm blanking on this right now. I've talked about too many wide receivers the last few days, but is looking like he is going to be an actual contributor for this offense. He is being targeted deep down the field, and if he's being put in during red zone work, that says something completely different than Patrick Mahomes just flipping him a 50-yard pass during 11-on-11. This is red zone work. This is stuff you don't waste opportunities in practice on red zone work because that's where the points are scored. That's where the bread is buttered. So you don't just throw away reps there. But number 2, this is a sign that he is not simply being counted on to take a safety down the field. If you're in the red zone, there's not too much further for the safety to run off to. So it'll be interesting to see what the roles are once this season starts and who is getting what reps where. Sam McDowell says the Chiefs open 11-on-11 team drill with Black Sabbath on the soundtrack. Ozzy Osbourne, you will be missed. Nick Jacobs, so for anyone who doesn't know, Ozzy Osbourne passed away yesterday. Apparently, Hulk Hogan passed away like an hour ago. So all sorts of the 80s are leaving us. Nick Jacobs, I was born in the 80s, so this is terrifying for me. Rice with an impressive one-handed grab, high pointed with extension on the quick release after the blitz went by, ball by Mahomes. Right where he left off last season. I mean, that's the one thing that we have seen from Rashee Rice so far this training camp, that there's no pause from where he was last year. He does not look rusty. He does not look out of shape. He does not look like his knee is bothering him. He does not look like he forgot how to catch the ball. It's just very impressive, and it is a shame that he did something exceedingly dumb and is going to pay for it with missing time in the NFL. Nick Roche says Charles Omenihu bats Minshew's pass down at the line of scrimmage. Nice to have him back fully healthy. Charles Omenihu is going to be an accelerant for this defensive line group. You are adding Omar Norman-Lott, who is a pass rusher. You were adding Ashton Gillotte, who is a high-energy pass rusher. You were adding Charles Omenihu, who is sort of, I guess you would say, an even-keel defensive lineman. Very solid versus the run at the defensive end position. I don't think you necessarily want him in the middle during heavy run games, but just contributes all over. This defensive line group, the more I think about it, has a whole lot of very interesting pieces. Has a whole lot of players that you think have a higher ceiling than they have demonstrated. George Karlaftis among them. George Karlaftis has been thus far in his career a decent to above average defensive end. But he's had some really good games. He had an 11-sack season. So you're looking at a guy who does have the ability to be a double-digit sack getter, and that's going to add up, I think. I think what you're going to see from this defensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs is the classic Steve Spagnuolo line where no one's just absolutely all out after the quarterback all the time, but everyone's a little bit after the quarterback all the time, and the sacks spread around. Pause. Omar Norman-Lott, again, getting a lot of work with the first team. Steve Spagnuolo leaning into rookie early, which is rare. And then I wanted to share from Jared Sapp something that I had missed yesterday. Need someone at camp to get a good pick of Omar Norman-Lott. Weighed in at 294 at the Combine. Today, Chris Jones said he's 315, which is his listed weight on the Chiefs website. If Omar Norman-Lott is 315 pounds and has not lost some of his explosion, etc., which sounds weird. It sounds Moneyball to say, if you remember Moneyball with Brad Pitt, where all the scouts were sitting around talking about how hot's his girlfriend. If he doesn't have a hot girlfriend, I don't want him. All this weird stuff from the scouts. Omar Norman-Lott's musculature, he rounds out. Now, what am I talking about? There are certain guys, Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson got cut. It was reportedly 2.5%, 3% body fat, something absolutely dangerous for mortals, but not for Bo Jackson. But every muscle that he had was rounded out. He did not lean out. He rounded out. Omar Norman-Lott's musculature is a rounding out type of musculature. And these are the guys that normally, like Bo Jackson, just have this freakish strength that you don't know where it comes from. And I think it's possible that he gains 20 pounds like that and does not lose his athleticism, because those guys are just different, in my opinion. I don't know what it is about them. I think, okay, if you want bro science, if you want Scrambling's bro science approach to this, I would imagine that what that is it's the muscle incorporating more fat into the muscle, like the way you see a finely marbled steak, right? I think that's what's going on there. There are certain people whose bodies incorporate fat into the muscle more efficiently, and that's why those people round out, other people lean down. Anyway, that's your bro science corner for the day. Moving on, Omenihu, Tillery, Tuipulotu, and Enudike Uzama on the second team during defensive line drills. During defensive line team, pardon me. Do not worry about Ashton Gillotte. I think that there's two things going on here. A, they have to earn it. Ashton Gillotte has to earn it. And B, Tillery, Tuipulotu, and FAU, in my opinion, every single one of them is fighting for a roster spot. I think this might be the year that we see the Chiefs move on from FAU if there is absolutely nothing shown at training camp. And they might as well figure out what it is that these guys can do now. And that means putting them in there with the second team. I don't think Omenihu's in any trouble, but Tillery and Tuipulotu, I think there are two UDFA defensive tackles on this team that are really primed for roster spots. We'll talk about them in a moment. And then FAU, if this offseason, if this preseason, you cannot outwork Ashton Gillotte, I think that there's no need for you on the team. I mean, I'm just going to be real honest, and I think that cutting bait now is just the way to go. And here we go with those other defensive linemen. Third team defensive line, Malik Herring, Keziah Izzard, Fabian Levette, Ashton Gillotte, with Robinson working in at end. Now, Izzard and Levette are those two aforementioned UDFA defensive tackles. Levette from last year, Keziah Izzard from this year. They have different games. Keziah Izzard is more of a pass rusher, did not have a whole lot of reps at the college level. Fabian Levette, former FSU guy, was a run-stop specialist, basically. And I think that he could be Derek Noddy post Derek Noddy. So you're looking at Keziah Izzard, and this is absolutely insane. A 9.71 RAS score. 6'2", 6'2.5", 298 pounds. Those numbers are acceptable, but not great. 25 bench press reps. That is a decent number. So he has 34-inch arms, but he hit a 4.85 40-yard dash. I repeat, at 298 pounds, ran a 4.85 40-yard dash with a 1.56 10-yard split. A 1.56 10-yard split at 298 pounds. I say you line him up at middle linebacker and see if anybody notices. A 4.52 short shuttle, which scores an 8.46. By the way, that 1.56 10-yard split is 9.99 out of 10 for defensive tackles. I would love to know who ran faster than so there was a Florida State defensive tackle, Bradenton. I'm blanking on stuff today. I'm sorry, guys. But he ran a pretty good 40. I wonder if he was the one defensive tackle that ran a better 10-yard split than Keziah Izzard. I think that this could be, sounds diminutive because they're both rookies, but this could be Omar Norman-Lott Jr. You're looking at a guy who has real quicks. I think that Keziah Izzard could be what the Chiefs thought they were getting when they drafted Colin Saunders, a guy that is really explosive, sort of a physical freak, and maybe a little undersized, but still a reasonably sized defensive tackle. Now, Colin Saunders wasn't underweight, right? He was just short. But here you have a guy that's basically the right height, 6'2.5", and a little bit underweight. You'd like to see him break 300. 315 is really where you want a defensive tackle, but a couple years in the NFL eating on that diet, he can get there. And then we have Fabian Levette, a guy who has a 6.87 RAS, but has a 6.7 ARS because height and weight are measured with grades, but hand size and arm length are not. Fabian Levette at 6'3.7", basically 6'4" inches tall, 316 pounds, has 35.5-inch arms, has 10 3/8-inch hands. Massive in those ways. 26 reps on the bench press, that's a decent number. 25.5-inch vert, 8'5" broad jump, both very bad numbers. A 5.01 40-yard dash is actually a pretty good number, and a 1.75 10-yard split. That is what's going to help him burst into the backfield to stop those running backs. Then you have a 4.82 short shuttle. I don't care that scores a 3.1 and a 3-cone of 7.56. I don't think that these numbers pertain to him in any way, shape, form, fashion, facet, or manner because he is going to be counted on to be a run stuffer in the NFL. That is what Fabian Levette is going to do, and I think here you have a pair of good defensive tackles to develop. Fabian Levette was on the practice squad last year, and I think this year he makes it up to the active roster. Then we have Nick Jacobs giving us the secondary starters here. Cornerbacks, Jalen Watson, and Trent McDuffie starting at the cornerback spots. In the slot is Chamari Connor. Free safety is Cook, and strong safety is Hicks. I think that Hicks is going to be an emergent star for this team this season. One thing that is interesting about this is with Christian Fulton sidelined, you have McDuffie returning to the edge. I think they want to use him, not the edge, but the cornerback as opposed to the slot spot. And I think they want to use McDuffie in the slot more this year. That is why they went out and got Christian Fulton at that, and they had struggles at the cornerback 2 position last year, which was really their cornerback 4, cornerback 5 being forced onto the field. And Joshua Williams, whose name I still have not heard in correlation with training camp this season. But you have Connor in the slot. I think that Connor is a guy who offers upside at safety and the slot position. This is obviously something that is not unique to me. That has kind of been the billing for him since he has been a Kansas City Chief. He, like I said yesterday, he's a guy that I just kind of always forget about. Had a surprising amount of snaps to me last season, 307, something like that, 357 maybe, but played a lot more than I had thought when I went to check that statistic. I think this is a make or break season for Cook. Has been decent, but has never really excelled. Has had some outstanding plays, but I don't think that he's ever been consistent enough like they thought he was going to be. And, this is in your career where you figure it out. So it might be that this is the season that everything clicks for him and he takes off. Then Jacobs giving us this: Noel Williams and Najee Johnson at corner with the 2s. Josh Williams rotating in. Dion Bush, Christian Roland Wallace, Edwards, and Hicks rotating in at safety based on the package. Gelati rotating in at left defensive end this round. Seeing Roland Wallace on the same level as, or seeing Dion Bush, seeing Mike Edwards on the same level with Dion Bush and Christian Roland Wallace should start alarms, right, for Edwards' chances of making this roster. He is a guy that was brought in already knowing the system. He was a veteran. He has played here before. To not be any higher than this on the depth chart, this may have been a sign and see type situation. Well, sign him back and see what he's got. And if he doesn't, no harm, no foul. Then seeing Noel Williams already in there with the 2s is pretty promising, but it is the 2s knowing that you have Watson, McDuffie, Fulton, and Connor ahead of him. So that would make him technically, now I don't think you're going to see Connor at the actual cornerback position. I think you're going to see Chamari Connor in the slot if he's not playing safety, but you will probably always have 2 healthy cornerbacks to be on the field, so you can have Chamari Connor in the slot if you need him there. So that means Fulton, Watson, Connor, McDuffie, and then Noel Williams. So that would put him as around the 5th cornerback. Then Najee Johnson, number 6, Josh Williams, number 7. So Josh Williams, I think, in very real danger of not making the roster this season. If you can flip him for something, I think you do it without question. He played earlier in his career, but has not really seen the field a whole lot. Didn't see the field a whole lot last season. It looks like he is not fixing to see the field a whole lot this season. Just worth noting here, Najee Johnson, for much of last season because of injuries, was the Chiefs' number 2 cornerback. Was the Chiefs' number 2 cornerback. Watson, Connor, McDuffie, Fulton, Noel Williams. Who was starting at number 2 for the Chiefs last season is number 6 this year. 5 or 6, right? Depending on how you're rotating things, but I don't think that they would give him the nod over Noel Williams at this point if they already have them at around the same level on the depth chart. Then we have this: Bossa, George, and McDonald at 3rd team linebacker. Bossa was the 5th round pick. George and McDonald were UDFA. Brandon George there, I think, has a has a decent chance to make the roster, but it would be predominantly as a special teams guy. I should have pulled up his RAS in here too, but he 9.98 or 9.99 RAS. There's a video for him on the channel. There's a video for Bassa on the channel. I did not make one for McDonald. I don't really think McDonald has all that much of a chance at either the team or the practice squad. So maybe I'm wrong, but I think that they will go with a different linebacker in the practice squad. I don't think George really will make the roster this year. I think this is probably a redshirt practice squad season for George. I don't think that you have to worry about him getting plucked off of the waiver wire or snatched off of your practice squad, because at this point he's just an athletic linebacker. He didn't really show much football acumen in college. He was just an athlete. He made some athletic plays, but he wasn't someone who really shined at any point in time. Mahomes pushes the ball downfield to Thornton on the corner route. He makes a diving grab that may have been caught. Would need a replay. We're going to go ahead and give it to him. Here on TSA, we're going to go ahead and give Thornton the downfield catch. This is another example of Tyquan Thornton making an impact. Now, look, this is when those guys make an impact. Shorts and shoulder pads, your 4.28 40-yard dash guys shine all day long. Pillar to post, as they say. And maybe it's not as good as it looks. But right now it does look good, and I think that Tyquan Thornton does make the team. Mahomes spots no safety deep over the middle and plays a game called toss one up to Worthy on the skinny post. We're going to see that this season. Unfortunately, we're not going to see it very often, because just like with Tyreek Hill on the field, defenses see that one or two times and realize, well, we just can't risk that. If we make the Chiefs put together a 14-play drive to go down and score, maybe somebody fumbles. Maybe there's an interception. Maybe there's a false start. But if we let them get 80 yards and one chunk play to Worthy over the middle of the field, then it's just 7 points right there. So I think that they will keep those safeties back. They will keep a lid on this offense. And it's going to be real fun, guys. You've got Xavier Worthy over here, one side of the offense. You've got Tyquan Thornton on the other side of the offense. All of a sudden, it's a draw to Isaiah Pacheco, and he's going to bust it for 30 yards. There's no safety. The linebackers are backing up at the snap of the ball. Wes Roche says, I don't see anything that suggests Josh Simmons' knee is bothering him in any way. This is the second day in a row we've had someone talk about this. You can't judge much from no pads besides quickness off the ball. You can't tell much from no pads besides quickness off the line, and he looks quick and comfortable. That's all you can ask. That is literally the only thing you can ask at this point. The observation was made yesterday that he's not even wearing a knee brace. Now, do I think that that is advisable? No. But it does show confidence, and it does show that he thinks that stability is there. And I want to look at this for a moment. This is his contract. 32 overall, 32nd overall pick in the NFL draft this year will cost the Kansas City Chiefs $2.7 million, $2.668, $2.7 million for a starting left tackle. Next year, $3.33 million. The year after that, 2027, $4 million. 2028, 4.7 essentially million dollars. You're looking at offensive tackles around the league making deca millions each season. You have Jawan Taylor making 20, right? Jawan Taylor making 20. So to have a starting left tackle that might be top tier making $2.7 million is exactly why the Chiefs are going to go to the Super Bowl multiple times in the next half decade. And by the way, they have a club option in 2029. It'll be a big jump up from $4.7 million, but they would still control the contract. And we have seen Brett Veach make moves as to not make players play on that fifth-year option, but instead to get them signed to a friendly deal. So here's where I wanted to take this video, and I'm glad that this came up so late in practice, so it didn't have to be one of the main things we talk about here for day 3 of Chiefs training camp. Minshew finds Howe Presley over the middle on a crosser after the coverage clears. Howe Presley is the UDFA wide receiver that the Chiefs signed out of Baylor after Justin Ross had requested his release. So they signed this guy, and I was like, I never heard of him. Genuinely never heard of him. So I'm doing my research, looking him up, trying to find scout. There's no scouting reports, so there's nothing to even test what you're seeing off of, right? Nothing to bounce that off of. So finding everything I can, finding the statistics, find some game film of him, and I'm watching him, and he reminds me of somebody. Just reminds me of I can't put my finger on it. Cannot put my finger on it for the life of me. And I get his numbers, and it's, not super impressive. 6.1 RAS score. He's 6'2", basically 6'2" flat, 210 pounds, 11 reps, 34.5-inch vert, 10'2" broad jump, 4.56 40-yard dash. The Chiefs have somebody that ran like a 4.56, 1.60 10-yard split. Okay. Short shuttle of 4.35, three-cone drill of 7.06. Those numbers are always in and out of my head anyway. I have no real context for them. So every time I do one of these things, I have to kind of go back and check what's good, what's not. For whatever reason, I've been keeping up with the draft for 20 plus years. Those numbers still confuse the hell out of me. But these numbers, they look so familiar. Well, I'm driving to work last night, and just at the back of my mind, your brain's playing something. And I was thinking about how Patrick Mahomes was saying he wanted to open the offense back up. That word back. Open it back up, right? And I don't know if he actually used that word, but in my head, I want to open the offense back up. We got to go back to having fun. And I'm thinking, when was it fun? When was it open, right? The most open we ever saw was 2018. The Legion of Zoom, right? And it's weird that it was called the Legion of Zoom because the Chiefs wide receivers today are way faster than that group was. Because there's one guy that, oh man, hold on. Demarcus Robinson. 6'1" and basically 6'1.5". 6'2" flat. 203, 210. We don't have the arm length or anything for him, but 9 reps on the bench press, 11 reps on the bench press, 34.5-inch vert, 10'3" broad jump, 10'2" broad jump, 4.56 40-yard dash, 4.59 40-yard dash, 1.59 10-yard split, 1.60 10-yard split. Now, the numbers that confuse me are pretty different. Demarcus Robinson was a bit more agile than is Howe Presley, but they're trying to put the old squad back together. They're trying to find their very own Demarcus Robinson to bring onto this squad and have someone to run the wrong way all the time. So maybe that is what they're doing with Howe Presley there being signed. Nearly wrapping things up. I apologize that this has gone on so long. But last note here, Brashard Smith and Nico Remigio are the return men on kickoff install. I think this duo could be super dangerous. The interesting thing is, what goes on with the rest of the kickoff return line? So you have, hypothetically, 4 tight ends on the roster. Travis Kelce's not playing kickoff return in order to block for Brashard Smith and Nico Remigio, but Jared Wiley could. Not the greatest blocker, though. Noah Gray could. Very high effort blocker. And then you have Jake Brenningstool, who I don't think is all that particularly good at blocking. But they do have a very athletic defensive lineman in Keough Izaak, who runs a 4.85 40-yard dash. And even Fabian Levette ran a 5.01. Fabian Levette at 3.16, 298 for Keough Izaak. And then, should one of these guys make the roster, which again, I don't think they will, but you have a guy like Dalton Cooper, who's 6'5.5", 323 pounds, runs a 4.99 40-yard dash. If somehow, some way, you could find some of these guys, these UDFA, on your kick return team, Brandon George, I don't know if he can block, but man is he big, man is he strong, man is he fast. It could be an absolute collection of just freak athletes on the kick return, blocking for, I almost said for Keough Izaak, but wouldn't that be a trick? Put Keough Izaak in the end zone and let him return a kick. But for Nico Remigio and Brashard Smith, Brashard Smith has super speed. Nico Remigio is one of these ultimate sort of get out of it guys. Don't know how he does it. Doesn't have the most speed. Didn't have the best testing numbers at all, but except for bench press, very good at bench press. So anyway, guys, that is what I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.